Wterfiji, you're next. Excuse me. Excuse me. Your word is conflict. What is conflict? The mental affliction you are feeling right now. Can you use it in a sentence? I am conflicted. Conflict. 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 That is correct. You may be seated. Thank you. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. It's Wterfiji up the good, your favorite spiritual auntie, and how are you doing today? Now, today we're back with you with another episode 3 of KIYE, currently healing in your element. And today is all about dealing with conflict and fear, because conflict causes fear. And so, as you are about to sit down and digest, make sure that you all like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell. Now, the other morning, I was making myself a bowl of oatmeal. And, I was just looking and comparing the two packs because, like the regular traditional oatmeal, the one with like the apples and spice, and then the cinnamon and spice, and the maple brown. And, I always liked the maple brown sugar oatmeal. And it's funny because, like, nobody ever really likes that one, which then made me think about how my favorite Pop-Tart was brown cinnamon sugar. Nobody really likes that. And it really got me to thinking, like, I was such an independent person because I was conditioned to stand out. And so many of us who are like hyper independent didn't have really of a choice. We always stuck out like a sore thumb. And it then got me to think about the conflict that I have, or even that you may have, or we may be experiencing when it comes to dealing with other people and exchanging our energies. And it really got me thinking that the whole time I was conflicted in myself because I didn't want to be seen. And yes, I'm naturally introverted, but I had a fear of truly being seen. And I want you all to ask yourself this question: who is conflict? And there's so many things that you can probably say right now. Conflict is my mama. She always got something to say. Conflict is my daddy. Hell, he ain't here. I don't know your story. I don't know. Conflict is your friend who always got something negative to say, always got the hottest tea, the hottest gossip. It can be your boss who never gives you a break. But we always put conflict on something external and giving it the enemy. Because deep down inside, if everything, and you truly believe that everything happens for a reason, and the people who you surround yourself with are a reflection of you. And so if you paint those things as the enemy, you then have to admit to yourself that you are conflict, you are your biggest enemy. And sometimes that can be a mouthful to digest. And I completely understand. And one thing that really helped me understand conflict and fear, I'm going to share with you guys. So I read the 4 agreements. And in the first part, it's called Domestication and the Dream of the Planet, right? And the part on this page 12 here where we're at, it says the human is the only animal on earth that pays 1,000 times for the same mistake. We make a mistake, we judge ourselves, we find ourselves guilty, and we punish ourselves. If justice exists, then that was more than enough. We don't need to do it again. And that goes into double jeopardy, okay? Stop double jeopardizing yourself. But every time we remember, we judge ourselves again, we are guilty again, and we punish ourselves again and again and again. That really caused me to look inward within myself with, penalizing myself and punishing myself each and every time for the things that I wanted to do and could have did but I didn't do. And I found myself back inside this loop. I'm doing good, I'm doing good, I'm doing good. And then boom, conflict comes. And then I'm back there inside that same cycle. You could have did this, you should have did that. And I had to really sit down and be like, you know what? It shoulda, coulda, woulda. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. But where are we at now? And that's exactly where you need to be. And that was just a beautiful, gentle reminder that you're always exactly where you need to be. Another good excerpt. We learn to dream hell in our own life, in our own personal dream. The same fears manifest in different ways for each person, of course, but we experience anger, jealousy, hate, envy, and all other negative emotions. Our personal dream can also become our ongoing nightmare, where we suffer and live in the state of fear. It's like looking back on this now, I read this book in 2021, and just the oatmeal reference, I went over that about a week ago, and just like me sitting here digesting that now, it kind of comes together together with what I was talking about, like being conditioned to stand out. We're conditioned to hate ourselves. We're conditioned to find the impurities and imperfections within ourselves rather than looking and saying and alchemizing, well, what can I do to be better? Well, okay, this is what I did. Kind of with the falling into your season episode 2. How can I alchemize this energy, alchemize this experience? What am I learning from conflict? Who is conflict? And before we dig into when and where did conflict start for us, I just want to also share with you guys 2 good quotes from the book. Death is not the biggest fear we have. Our biggest fear is taking the risk to be alive. The risk to be alive and express what we really are. Just being ourselves is the biggest fear of humans. We have learned to live our lives trying to satisfy other people. We have learned to live by other people's point of view because of the fear of not being accepted and not being good enough for someone else. Now, I'm going to let you sit there and meditate on that. In your whole life, nobody has ever abused you more than you have abused yourself. And the limit of your self-abuse is exactly the limit that you will tolerate from someone else. Who is conflict and understanding the identity of conflict. Now, when and where did conflict start? It may have started at different age points for all of you. Everybody's experience is different, and everybody goes through life in their own way. However, we all have a similar timeline, because you see, conflict starts when you're young, when you're a child. And we are then taught to feel conflict in various ways, shapes, forms, and fashions, because how we deal with conflict now is a product of when and where it started. And that goes into your different, the 4Fs, your fight, your flight, your freeze, and your fawn stages of how you respond to trauma or conflict, how you respond to fear. And these 4 responses are all different ways how your body reacts, how your mind reacts to trauma, to conflict, to fear. In flight responses, when you experience conflict, you want to escape. You may never be able to sit down. You're always up around, moving around. You may have really bad anxiety. You may have asthma. I mean, you may even have insomnia. But that flight response is your body letting you know, I want to escape from this conflict. And you want to run. You want to run away. You want to run, you want to hide. And I get it. But it's all about what you do. We're going to talk about that in a second. Fight response. This is the combative people. Okay, the people who don't mind conflict. Okay, you protect yourself from trauma through conflict. Okay, this can be physical. Okay, but even though the fight response may be, we think of fist fighting, but crying a lot. And there's so much built up energy in anger and rage that sometimes I know y'all know that one person in the neighborhood and you pushed him too hard off the swing and they get to. And that tiff, baby, you run. They about to beat your ass. Baby crying. That is another response. If fight is your trigger response to when you are having an encounter with conflict. Also, my fight response, people. This is also, some of you may have a difficulty with trusting your intuition or or trusting your gut, because that fight response, it governs that chakra down there. And so you have a difficulty of tapping into that feeling. I feel like that's why you can't, I don't know, you stopped feeling a long time ago. That's why you angry all the time. I mean, it makes sense. Freeze. My freeze day. How you choose or how your body reacts and your mind reacts to conflict. That's your mind and your body trying to protect yourself from the threat that you're experiencing. And when you freeze, it's like you're disassociating yourself with just essentially where you are. You're like a deer stuck in the headlight. You have disassociated yourself from in front of this car. You not here for real. This can't be happening. And now you done got hit. Feeling stuck, feeling stagnant, feeling trapped, feeling tired, feeling really heavy, feeling frozen. I mean, these are, where do we feel conflict? Where are we feeling it? These are your responses, and it's important for you to understand what your triggers are, and so that way you can also know your responses. But that's how you find out what your triggers are. And you learn your responses, so that way you can help learn how to cope, manage, deal with conflict in a healthy and respectable way for yourself, so you can grow. And last but not least, even though it's the newest, one of the 4, the last edition of the 4Fs, the fawn response. My fawn babies, you resolve and react to conflict by classifying well, not even like yourself, but really even like yourself. Y'all make yourselves feel smaller so that way the people around you can feel bigger. Let me do this that way they don't get too angry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You can never say no. People pleasing, that's the fun. And I don't care what you say. You're a people pleaser because you have to make yourself small to feel accepted. And that's the fawn response. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly okay to want to be loved and accepted and appreciated. But you gotta set no boundaries. You do. And now that we have an understanding somewhat of when did conflict start, childhood, and where do we feel it? Well, we just went over the responses, but why is conflict important? Conflict comes in various shapes, forms, and fashion. And conflict is important because it's a part of self-growth. Without conflict, you wouldn't really know who you are, actually. Without things falling through, you wouldn't know who you were, who you are now. Because if everything just was easy, if everything just was not of conflict, you would be too open. You wouldn't have a sense of identity, a sense of self. And due to conflict, you now know what is for you and what's not for you. You know what lessons you need to learn and what you need to grow. That's why conflict is important, because without conflict, you wouldn't have you. Come on, somebody. And how to deal with conflict. You see, there are so many different ways that you can help yourself within learning how to deal with conflict. Meditation, whatever form of relaxing and calming your mind that you can do. It can be active, inactive, yoga, music, swimming, walking, running, jogging, hell, even mountain climbing, whatever you want to do. Drive. Find a way to relax your mind, bring the overstimulation down and ground yourself. Engage, move around. Okay, especially for my freeze response people, because you're frozen, you're so used to freezing, you're so used to, being, I'm not even here. Walk around and be present, be conscious of where you are. Allow yourself to check in with your mind, body, and soul. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Hell, do that if you have to. Anytime you feel like you're about to freeze yourself up, do head, shoulders, knees, and toes, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. That's going to help you get out of your freeze, because how can something freeze if it's moving? Inertia. Okay, help yourself by also, like I said earlier, identifying those triggers, so that way you can identify what response that is in, so that way you can then know how to properly gear yourself and the other people around you, because that's also important, your support system. Because at the end of the day, everybody needs somebody. I don't care how independent, how hyper independent, because guess what, baby? It's good to be on your own, but when you have an empire with you, a tribe with you, you're better in numbers. And having a good support group who can help you combat your intrusive thoughts by helping you, support you, lift you up, and whatever that looks like. And learn how to communicate, because you got to be able to communicate to these people, let alone yourself, or what does that support look like? Because support looks different for everybody else. And by learning and taking the time with yourself, then you'll be able to express that with other people, and then have boundaries. And then you'll be wanting to be seen for who you truly are. And you're not only the things that make you beautiful, but even your imperfection. But all of that comes into play when you practice self-compassion, darling. Practice self-compassion, because at the end of the day, you are all beautiful. You are all powerful, beautiful, and abundant people. But you got to tell yourself that first before I can tell you that. And what I will say is, I love you all. Ashe.
My head make me gag, ho. Take it. On my head when I shake it. Take it. Ass fat, it ain't bacon.